It's a little bit more colorful on the screen than on your bulletin. But, you're supposed to be looking at the stars, actually. Kind of, yeah. This morning I want to take you back. I want to take you back to a simpler time. A time that some of you probably remember. I don't remember. The 1950s. And somebody was happy. The 1950s. Actually, I want to talk about a movie that comes from the 1950s. Let's see, what was the name of it? Stars in My Crowd. Anybody remember this movie? Stars? Got one. One person remembers this movie. It is a story essentially about a pastor. It is set in a small town, still reeling from the after effects of the Civil War. And this pastor comes to town and all the work that he has to do to bring this community back together again after being torn apart by the war. But there's a subplot to this that I really want to focus on this morning, and this is the story of Uncle John. Uncle John is an African-American man who does not have much. A small cabin, a few acres of land, but he has lived in this community for years. He grew up here. He was born here. He knows everyone, and everyone knows him. That's why they call him Uncle John. But he was especially fond of the young boys. So many generations had grown up there, and he had taught them how to hunt, how to fish. He listened to their stories. He told them stories. When they broke up with their girlfriends, they came out to find Uncle John. And they cried on his shoulder. Generations had grown up doing this. But now Uncle John's world was crashing. His whole world was crashing around him. Everything was in flux. Everything was changing. Because a mining company had come to town and discovered copper on Uncle John's land. Uncle John could have cared less. He was happy with his little cabin. He was happy with his few acres. He was born in this house. He was going to die in this house. He didn't need the money, he didn't need the copper, he didn't need all of that. But the townspeople, the people living in the community, the business leader, they were seeing dollar signs. Business was coming to town. They were going to get rich. Businesses, factories, all of this, they were going to bring the highway through. And so they go out and they try to talk to Uncle John. No, I'm happy with the way it is. No. So the townspeople get together, they go out and they offer to buy the land from Uncle. No, I don't want to sell. I was born in this house, I'm going to die in this house. This is just the way it is. That's the way I want it. It's mine. This is the only thing I have in the world. You can imagine what happened next. The townspeople got together. And they're like, who does he think he is? Telling us no. And so they got together. They banded together a group closer to a mob. And they got a rope. They were going to hang Uncle John. And out to Uncle John's cabin they went. Well, the preacher got wind of it, and he hurried out to Uncle John's cabin. He kept the crowd back somehow. I don't remember how, but he got them to hold off, and he went in and he talked to Uncle John. He was in there quite a while, the two of them talking. Pretty soon the preacher came out. He went up to the mob, and he said, Uncle John knows that his time is up, that he's about to die. But before he goes, he wants me to read to you his last will and testament. The crowd is like, sure, go ahead. It's not going to change anything. Probably a good idea. Go ahead, preacher. So the preacher starts to read. Tom. I see you back there, Tom. Uncle John wants to give you that old fishing pole of his. You know, the one that you caught your first bass on? Tom dropped his head. The preacher continued. Peter! I see you there, Peter. Uncle John wants to give you that old hunting rifle of his. You know, the one that he taught you how to hunt on? And Peter started to back up in the crowd. And the preacher continued reading off names, and by the time he got to the end, there was nobody left. They'd all gone home. Uncle John comes out of the cabin, and about that time, Uncle John's grandson comes running up from the bushes. Uncle John had sent him out into the woods to keep him safe. But his grandson had been close enough to hear and see everything that had gone on. And he came running up to his grandpa. Grandpa, what kind of will was that? And Uncle John looked at his grandson and said, that was the will of God, son. That was the will of God. End of scene. Uncle John's world was crashing around him. And yet, through all of that, friends that were turning on him, persecution for just wanting to hold on to a small cabin and a few acres of land, he still kept hold of his faith. He held fast to what he believed, and he reached out even to those who were persecuting him with love and compassion. And I often wonder, could I do the same? Would I do the same? And I pray to God I never have to find out. Jesus' world was crashing around him too. If you notice where this Bible passage comes from, it's from the 21st chapter in Luke. We're getting towards the end of the story here. They have entered Jerusalem, and I like to believe Jesus knew what was coming. He and some other followers were going through the temple, this magnificent structure, huge, ornate, and people were gasping and oohing and awing and talking about how these huge stones were built up and how ornate and how all of this had been given to God. And Jesus looks at them and says, well, you know, folks, the day is coming, perhaps soon, when not one stone will remain upon another. All of this will be demolished. All of this will be gone. One thing about a written text, sometimes we kind of gloss over or skip over the emotions. Think about this for a moment, would you? What if you brought a friend, somebody that you knew, into this church, into this church, and you were showing them around the beautiful pipe organ, the altar with the inlaid Last Supper, and the beautiful stained glass, and all of the beautiful ornate things that we put in this church, and your friend looks to you and says, well, you know, one of these days, all this is going to be gone. It'll be demolished. Not one brick will remain upon another. What would be your response? Silence, I know.
Enjoy it until it's gone.
Enjoy it until it's gone? Wouldn't be my reaction.
It's not about the building.
Not about the building, yeah.
Well, I'd say I want to fight for it.
You?
I
Fight for it?
want it to happen, yeah.
Anybody would say that's sacrilege? Well, this is such a beautiful church. How can you say that? How can you say that this beautiful building will one day be gone? Why would you say that? And I suspect that was kind of the disciples' response to Jesus. What on earth would make you say that, Jesus? This beautiful structure dedicated to God, and you're saying it's going to be gone. What kind of sign are you reading? What signs are you reading? How do you know this is going to happen? When? When is this going to happen? And then I think Jesus got a smile on his face. Because Jesus was a teacher. He was a rabbi. And the students were asking questions. They wanted to know. And so Jesus tells them, you know, in this world, conflict happens. Cataclysms occur. There are terrible wars and famines and pestilences, and all of these things happen in this world. They occur. The question is, what are you going to do when they happen? What will be your response when these things occur? So often when this is what Jesus says, so often when cataclysms occur, when terrible things happen, leaders arise and say, come follow me, I have all of the answers. Are you going to go chasing after them? Perhaps Jesus was thinking of his own impending death. When I'm gone, are you going to go running after the next person that comes up and says, hey, follow me, I've got the answers? Or are you going to stick fast, hold fast to what I've been teaching you? I've taught you the truth. I've taught you about the Father. And when these terrible things happen, when cataclysms and all of this war and other things happen, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to hold fast? Are you going to continue working for God's kingdom as I have taught you? Or are you going to run after the first person that comes and says, come follow me, I got the answer? It's really up to you. And then Jesus goes into persecution and talks about all of the persecution that will occur and that will happen. He says, hold fast. Hold on. Keep working in love and compassion to bring about God's kingdom. And then Jesus says something that is almost bizarre. It's truly almost bizarre. He says, you're going to be hauled before princes and magistrates and judges. All of these people, you're going to be hauled in front of them, and when you do, don't prepare your defense in advance. Huh? In 3 years of law school, I've never had a professor say, when you have a client and you're going to court, don't prepare anything, don't get ready, and I'll just go in and just say whatever comes in your mind. I have a feeling you'll be disbarred. You don't do that. You prepare, and you prepare hard. You study the law books, but Jesus' advice is, don't prepare in advance. Make up your mind not to prepare anything in advance to defend yourself. I will give you the words that no one can refute. Why would he say this? The commentaries, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it. I really don't. To me, Jesus' words are very hard in this place. The commentaries aren't very much help either. A lot of the commentaries just skip over this section. Or they gloss over it and say, well, his words are understandable, and move on. One commentary, however, that I read said something like this. I don't know what Jesus really meant. I'm not sure. But let me take a stab at it. Perhaps what Jesus is trying to say here is stop thinking only about yourself. It's not about you. If you're spending all of your time, all of your energy, all of your ability working on your defense, working on what you're going to say, working on how you're going to keep yourself out of trouble, it's all about you. What about everybody else? What about those other people who have not heard about God's kingdom? What about those people who are persecuting you? Maybe they need to hear about God. Maybe you need to be reaching out to them in love and in compassion. Maybe you need to make your last will and testament and make it about them. Sound familiar? Uncle Joe. And Jesus says, if you do this, death is not an end. Death is but the beginning. A beginning of something much, much greater. In our world today, here in East Central Kansas, persecution, religious persecution, I've never experienced any. I don't know about you. I suspect there might be one or two people in here who might know a little something about religious persecution. They could probably tell us something. That does still happen, and it happens even in this country, where we're supposed to have religious freedom. Jesus' words are still true for us today. We need to reach out to those who are suffering from religious persecution in love and compassion. We're also to reach out to the persecutors. Cataclysm. Terrible things that happen. They do happen here in Kansas too. Tornadoes. Floods, fires. We're even starting to have an earthquake or two. Cataclysms do occur. Jesus' words are still there. Loss of life. Lives are taken before their time and we don't have good answers. Cataclysm happens in our lives. The question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to follow after the first person that comes along and says, come follow me, I got all the answers? Or are you going to hold fast, stay fast to what you believe, to the truth that Jesus taught 2,000 years ago? Will you reach out in love and compassion and try to bring about God's kingdom? Finally, and I doubt this was on Jesus' radar, but it's certainly very much on ours. Our world, because of the ever-changing technology, seems to be crashing about our ears and rising back up almost on a daily basis. For those of us who are getting older, it's almost overwhelming. How can you keep up with the ever-changing technology? For those of you who are younger, it's fun and exciting. What would Jesus say about it? My guess is Jesus would say something like, it really doesn't matter. If you like it, do it. If you don't. It's technology. If it makes your life better, well, why not? And it's up to you. But it's not the point. It's technology. It's a tool. Use it if you want. Don't if you don't want to. It's up to you. My guess is that is probably what Jesus would say. But the point is, I get on TV and I see young people inserting chips into their hands. Chips, so that all they have to do is put their hand next to their motorcycle and the motorcycle starts up. You can do the same thing with a chip for your car. You can start your car with a chip, and you don't need keys, you don't need passwords. They can have another chip for their house. They can control all of the things in their house with another chip. They can even do their banking with a chip inserted in their hands. And then the commentators and the people going on about it start talking about how godlike their abilities are. And I have a feeling this is where Jesus would start having a problem. It's technology. Use it if you want. If that makes you happy, why not? But that's up to you. But it does not make you God. Are you going to start following after every trend and everything that rises up and going after it and thinking you are now somehow godlike? Listen to me. This too will one day fall. Not one stone will be left upon another. It won't last forever. But my words will last forever. The faith that I've taught you to trust in God, to follow after God, the words that I've taught you, and about working for God's kingdom, working towards that end and bringing through love and compassion God's world to this one, that will last forever. The technology, it doesn't make you gods. There is a God. Follow Him and follow Him only. Work to bring His kingdom here on earth. And one day, Christ will come. And that crown of stars will be yours. Live for that day.